So I'm Scott King, and I'm sitting here at my house on Horseshoe Drive in Topanga, and it's February 15th, 2018, and I got my buddy Frederick Meyer here, architect par excellence, and also my friend of long time, about 30 years, neighbor up the street until recently, and we just thought we'd see if we could just tell some stories about Horseshoe Drive. I am the current longest continuous living person on the street, but Frederick's got more years here on the street, so we're kind of the senior members around here. It could be argued that Doug Hansen is a third one, and he's not with us today, but so we're going to just talk about what it's been like all these years to live here, what it was like back in the day, and what it's like now, and in between, and stuff, and things that have happened, and stories and stuff like that. So just to start, I moved here in 1986, May 12th, so I'm coming up on 33 years. Next May, a couple months will be 33 years, and had a lot of adventures along the way. So Fred, I'll pass it to you and let you just say whatever you say.
Yeah, one thing I noticed in looking back and realizing that I live at the top of Horseshoe, the highest elevation of three of us up there, 3 lots, and also has the least frontage because you guys all have regular lots. Well, I had about 12 feet of frontage, so I could drive my car in there.
On Horseshoe, right?
On Horseshoe.
Yeah.
So I was part of Horseshoe, and yet my mailbox was down on Fernwood Pacific, which wraps around. And more than that, across the street was Dix Creek, which was sort of an alien world to Horseshoe Drive, which is really sort of contained here. And that was another experience that was sort of unique to what I had there. And in fact, Dix Creek is a wonderful parkland. I mean, it's amazing that it wasn't just frequented by people all the time, because when it rained and water rushed through there, it was beautiful. The boulders as big as Volkswagens and cascades and a cataract there. And then after a few days, it would clear and the water would be, the creek would be running clear, and you could sit on there and drain your hand in the water. And it's just a great place. I spent a lot of time down there. But I was the only one who used it, and it was free, a free park for me all these years. It's just wonderful. And I would tell everybody about it, but no one ever really found it other than me. So that was one difference from the rest of the Horseshoe group here. But also, Fernwood Pacific Drive is had a lot of traffic, has a lot of traffic now, but back then it was a different kind of traffic. Late at night, you would hear skateboarders rolling down from way up higher yet and whirring through the curves and really going pretty fast. Just amazing that these guys would be doing that. And the other story I have about that is Dallas and I had 2 cats, and we would take them out for walks. And one time we walked all the way down Horseshoe Drive and then up Fernwood Pacific to where my place is again, just with cats, without leashes. And
really, without leash?
You can't do that today.
No. I've never had a cat that would stay with me like that either.
Well, nobody really leaves their cats out anymore either, because in all the years that I've been here, for the first 20 or so, I only saw 1 coyote, and now that's a whole different scene, I know.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, that brings me back up to now I'm part of Horseshoe Drive and have been socially all these years. And
absolutely.
So that
you always will be. You always will be.
The great part of it. So I'm back at the top here, so I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, well, I just, there used to be quite a few feral cats. Looking here at my backyard below my house, and this is an old ancient creek bed through here. There used to be quite a few feral cats around here. Up to as late as maybe 3 years ago, I'd see, maybe 4 years ago, I'd see several, and I got to know them, and they'd kind of hang out and come and go, and boy, I haven't seen any cat, maybe one in the last year, and I don't see him or her anymore. So yeah, it's tough go out here for cats anymore, but no, it's amazing you walked your cats without a leash. And then, yeah, you said something else there. I wanted to. Oh, Dick's Creek. I went to Dick's Creek last year during the rain.
Ah,
I remembered what you had told me about Dick's Creek, and it is indeed a magical place. It was probably around this time of the year. It had been raining, flowing real good, and like grass everywhere. And you know, this is the one time of the year around here we get anything green. Usually it's pretty brown, and this year it's super dry, so it's not going to last. So I'm glad we're taking this picture today. But
the other thing about those old days too was that the dogs ran free in the neighborhood, and that was a pleasure for me because they would stop by and I would give them a little treat, and I had a lot of friends, and then they would go merrily on their way. But sometimes they would hang out with me. They'd come in the house and take a nap and so on. Also, there was a part wolf, I think 3/4 wolf. Cosimo was her name,
Really?
down on Bainham, and I got friendly with her, and I would leave my door open at night, and just a crack, because I kind of knew her habit. And so early in the morning, she would come in and come all the way into my house, into my bedroom, and there would be her nose right in my face to wake me up early in the morning. Every time I would leave the door open, there she would be.
wow. Yeah, I don't think, you know, when I moved in, there was a pack of 13 wild dogs up here. They weren't wild, but
Wow.
you know, they were free. And I heard there was 13 of them, and the very first night I was here, we were sleeping up on the other side of the house, and I heard all this rumbling and ruckus on the roof, and I go, what in the hell? Now, I came from Venice, right? You don't get that in Venice. Well, you get other stuff, but so I went outside, and there's 5 dogs running around on the roof. I said, what are you guys doing up here, man? It was really a surprise.
Packs of dogs, though. There was an old guy that lived down in the valley here off of Horseshoe at the end of the shoe here. And he had a staff. He would walk with the staff like a shepherd. And he had a pack of dogs. Every time he would take a walk, all the neighborhood dogs would kind of gather around him and follow him everywhere.
Was that Mac?
That was old Mac.
Yeah, I never met him. Yeah.
And some of those dogs were regulars at my house, you know, but when Mac went out for a walk, there they were. He had them in command. He would go walk them all the way down to Topanga Boulevard, I think, sometimes. Not quite that far, but they were loyal to him, and that was just part of his being here. Mac was a colorful little character, and kind of a hermit, lived down there by himself, but a very congenial guy.
It's an interesting place where his house is, because you can't see it at all from the street, and it's way down in a ravine. In fact, I think it's landlocked. I don't know what the legality, but there's some trail. You can't drive to it. You got to walk down there. It's down the street. Maybe we'll go cruise around and see that. Not go to it, but see where it. Anyway, where it is on the street. But speaking of people on the street, I've got to mention Doug Corey. Doug Corey is an old friend of ours, a.k.a. the Wizard of Topanga. And this was a guy that was, well, he looked like he was 150 years old. Long white beard, hair out to here. And when we first came up the street to look at this house, we had gotten a hold of a list of every property in Topanga, and we were kind of running out of options, and we hadn't seen this one yet. And we came up the street, and up the street is walking this guy with this long white beard, a long black coat, and a big, broad, flat brim hat. And I saw this guy walking up the street, and I thought, man, this is cool. I want to live here. And so I credit Doug being a big reason why, because I just got that, you know, sometimes you just get these hits, and then the rest of it was right too. So we ended up getting the house. But yeah, old Doug, I had a lot of stories about Doug. He built a house by himself down on a hillside down there, not too far from the other one we were talking about. And he lived there pretty much until he died, I guess, a few years ago.
In his 90s.
Yeah, he was 92 or 3. And quite a guy.
he went back into the old what do they call it? The psychedelic ages.
Oh yeah.
And had some stories about that. And he thought that God was a cube, in fact, or that the cube was a God. Either way, and the inside of the outside, and he had a whole routine about the way he envisioned this cube three-dimensionally and the intricacies of it. And we had many discussions about that, and he would be glad to tell you all about it.
The reflected reflection of the reflected reflection, I remember him saying.
Beautiful. That's it.
And he was really into chaos theory, and boy, his mind went places that I couldn't even hope to. But it was really interesting listening to him. And
professor at UCLA, I think, originally in psychology. I think that was his.
Could be, yeah. He had some land. I know he lived in Fiji for 15 years. He had a plantation in Fiji that that we went to.
That's right.
Spent 10 days at the plantation, and pretty interesting. I won't tell about that because it gets off our track. But anyway, really interesting guy. He used to run with Tim Leary, and he was friends with Jerry Haig, who everybody in the Historical Society knows as a past president. Other people in Topanga would know Jerry as the Birdman of Topanga. He led bird walks over there in the park. That, by the way, is the park right across the way there. He would lead bird walks, I think, once a month on a Sunday morning and just teach all about the birds. He taught me a lot about the birds here. Just an amazing guy, and he was friends with Doug. And all these guys ran with this sort of progressive psychological movement, and I believe there might have been some experimentation with various substances.
Indeed.
But anyway, yeah, quite a guy, Doug. So, all right, this is, you got more?
A different line, I guess.
Go.
Something about brush clearance over the years.
Yep.
And how in the old days, back in the early 80s, late 70s, it wasn't a big deal. They talked about it and they reminded you of it every year. But I remember having a bonfire in my kind of vacant lot next to me of a way of dealing with that.
Yeah, you can't do that now.
Just burn it right on site.
Yeah, well, you'd get arrested and locked up forever.
And the other one was that next to me also was a pasture with 2 horses by my neighbor, owned by their neighbor for their kids. And that was another way to get rid of all the stuff. Once a year I would kind of cut back on the bushes and so on, just throw it over the fence.
Yep.
And they would eat it all. Then go back a couple of days later and it was gone. You made sure you didn't feed them oleander though, because they would get sick from that. But gosh, it became a real issue for me after these later years with having to deal with that every year, as we all do. You know, I know you do a lot of work every year.
Every year.
And you have to now because the danger is just accelerated tremendously through the years. Perception of it, but also in reality, it's just gotten more dangerous. And it wasn't such a thought back then.
Well, I remember Bud, the old realtor that he was a retired radio engineer, and boy, I wish I had just one picture of Bud because he was a character. And he showed us, we'd come up here, we'd spend a whole day, and he'd take us all over Topanga. He had a story for every lot that he ever showed us, even if we had no interest, but he'd show us anyway, and he'd tell these stories. And I remember him saying, got to clear it down to bare mineral earth. That's the requirement, bare mineral earth. So for the first 10 years I was here, we'd scrape, and when we first moved in here, this was a complete jungle down here. This is just overgrown. I mean, talk about a fire hazard. Nobody cleared this in years and years and years. And so I'd have a crew of guys come in and we'd scrape it down to the dirt and put it in 40 or 50 trash bags and put it up by the street for the trash people to take a few bags at a time. And that took months. And then I got a weed eater, and that made it a lot easier. But yeah, Bud, boy, he worked for Coast and Canyon Realty, Connie Wright's outfit, and He died not too long after we bought this house, but boy, he was sure fun to see Topanga with. Gave us a real good introduction.
You know, we've been here simultaneously through the years, but you're in kind of a different part of the Horseshoe.
Yeah.
And you have stories about some of the people that I don't really know that well. And I was kind of isolated up there for the first many years, in fact. My girlfriend and I would not really be socially with all the rest of the shoe. It was just wasn't done. And that changed, though, after, I guess it was the 90s maybe, when a new wave of people kind of moved in and discovered Topanga. It kind of happens in waves. And artists, creative people, all of a sudden, boom, we've got a road that's just filled with it and just been wonderful. And part of that then has been also with dogs, that we were talking about dogs running free before. Well, these people that moved in, they would walk their dogs with a leash for the most part. Right. And so then my property became important because I was the avenue to get through down to Bainham, and so that they could walk on a real less traveled road again. Right. And so people would ask for permission to walk through my property, and I would, grant that. And I made some really great friends that way. In fact, your neighbor right here, Mark, was a great friend that I made through that whole experience. And it was just nice having, Horseshoe Drive walk through my property. And how you doing?
Well, you had the unique place, and we'll probably go up there later. Else living there, so we can't really. I don't know. Maybe we can go through it. But his property, you go up to the end of Horseshoe, it's cul-de-sac, and then go down his driveway, past his house, down some steps, and you're on Fernwood. And if you wanted to and then you can go to Bainham and over to Grandview area and all that directly without going all the way down and around. Fernwood runs around and up over the top here. Without doing all that stuff, you can just go up top of Horseshoe, cut through, and you're there. So that was a really handy, and we're all just really grateful to you for leaving that open to us all these years.
It opened my life. It really did in many ways, I think.
Well, that's neat. That's cool.
Yeah, that was fun. And also, beyond that, how the last group here for the last 20 years have been really a tight group. We've all sort of gotten together and had our parties and so on every year. And
every year
for baby showers and anything that happened to happen on the shoe. So I really benefited a lot, probably more so in the latter years as far as socially here. And the whole street has just become more of a social place, and it's and obviously filled with wonderful people. That's been a treasure.
When I first moved here, I really thought I had died and gone to heaven. Honest to God. I mean, I would say that, I would feel that, I would think it, because everybody on the street, it seemed to me, was sort of like-minded. Everybody was working on their houses. I like working on houses. And they were all either contractors or serious weekend warrior types, and just fixing stuff up. And everybody had kind of a unique vehicle. I could tell, whoever was going up and down the street, I could tell by sound. Every car. You had an old MG, and I can hear it right now, just sitting here. I can hear your MG going up or down because it sounded different. And I can hear Craig's old, he had a Toyota Land Cruiser, and Terry Stoller had an old Toyota truck, kind of like the one I still have, and who else? I don't know. But, and we would just hang out, in the street. We'd drive up the street, there'd be somebody out, Doug Hansen's down the road, and he'd be out doing something, and just stop and right in the middle of the street, turn off the engine, and talk for 45 minutes. And then if somebody came up behind, more often than not, they'd shut off their engine and join in the conversation. We'd have like 2 or 3 cars parked and just kind of gather, we just and then next door over here, well, the guy who lived here first was Bob Hines. He was kind of a cowboy guy, and he was Hines of Hines Ketchup. I never knew him too well because he was gone kind of before I got to know him too well. But he was friends with Ken and Colleen Hoff, and he wanted to sell his house, so he sold his house to Ken and Colleen. And Ken and Colleen were really into horses. And so before too awful long, we had horses right here next to us, right there. And we got to be really good friends with Ken and Colleen, and we'd go riding. And that was back in the day when you could go across Horseshoe Drive, down a trail, across by Mac's house that we talked about Mac earlier, and up around the other side, and end up down kind of near into the 7th Ray, down at the corner of Old and New Canyon. And then you could also go up trails and get to other places in the canyon right from here. Can't do that anymore. There's, I think, 5 more houses on the street now than there were when I moved in '86. And I didn't think there was room for more than one. And that was Terry's, because he was building that when I moved in. I helped him work on that house a little bit. So yeah, it was a remarkable, and the Horseshoe people, I got to feel like they were family. They were like my family. I mean, friends, and we just, we're here on the street, and Fire 93 came along, and that really bonded us, and we've had meetings about fires and meetings about various neighborhood concerns over the years, and just all, and of course our summer party. We've had a summer party here, I think, every year. I've got a note in my refrigerator I was going to bring down. I think you said '86 was the first one you remember. And I like to think we were the cause of that. I don't know if it's self-aggrandizing or not, but when we moved in here, there was sort of a curious guy that lived here, and he had some sort of quirky traits, and I don't think he was all that social with the people on the property. People on the street. And I'm just guessing that. And so when we moved in, we figured that maybe the people on the street might be interested in what goes on down here. And so we had a summer solstice party on the 21st of June in 1986.
But I didn't get invited. I don't know why.
Because we didn't know you were there. Because your house was down the road.
Yeah, maybe that was right.
And I've felt bad about that ever since. But heck, we went up and down the street and knocked on doors and invited every neighbor. Said, "Hi, we just moved in down the road there, and we're going to have a party. And we're inviting anybody and everybody we've ever met, or might meet, or did meet, or friends, or whoever. And come on down." And so people came and went all day long. It's kind of an open house, and that way we got to know all the neighbors. And then later on that summer, we had the first horseshoe party at the end of the street, or at least in this latest series.
And it was your 2 neighbors, or a couple of neighbors right up here, that I think organized that for Labor Day.
Oh, was that Jack and Lexi?
Jack's wife, and who I didn't know at all.
Yeah.
And Anna.
And
Craig
Anna.
and Anna.
Okay, Craig and Anna. Yeah.
So I think that's my memory of the first one. They put that together Labor Day, but probably inspired by your party.
Yeah, that's roughly as I remember it. And of course, we were new here, just a couple of months, and I didn't know the other people very well at all. But it was interesting going up and down the street, just knocking on the door. "Hi, how you doing? We just moved in." I haven't really ever done that before or since, but it was pretty cool.
I did that once, actually, come to think of it. That just reminded me. Dallas and I, my girlfriend, that when I first moved in here for a few years, kind of effort to do the same thing, get to meet the people on the street. We had a tradition back there in a German little town of Christmas sacks, where the community would gather and you would get a sack of just a brown paper bag with an orange and an apple and peanuts and nuts and so on, and candy bars. So we made up sacks for the whole neighborhood and delivered them. And in fact, walked down to see old Mac.
Yeah.
And kind of surprised him, and he appreciated that. And in return, in fact, we walked out on his property there, and he had these big pine trees, huge pine trees, that had these big cones like that. And I still have one, in fact, that he gave us,
Neat.
for that, as in return. So, that was a neat experience, and a way to, like you say, get to meet everyone.
I don't remember that you might have predated us.
That predated you.
Yeah, because I don't remember. Christmas sacks.
Yeah. I think they still do that back in my hometown, which is where I'm going now.
Oh, yeah.
Back in Iowa.
All right, well, we took a little break here, and it's wind's coming up, so we had to put on some coats here. Not that we're not big, gnarly mountain men, but, why not be comfortable? So we're talking about people that lived here, and I wanted to go back to the very beginning. April 21 of 1986 was a Monday, and I started working up here, just kind of getting the house ready we could move into it. It needed some work, and so I was up doing some work upstairs. Yeah, need a lot of work, and I was doing some work upstairs next to the stairs that come down from the driveway, and I'm working up there, and I hear somebody and see somebody coming down the stairs, kind of an older guy, and who's this and what's this all about and stuff, and he introduces himself as Paul Duber. And Paul Duber had been here for quite a while, old German guy. Really cool old German guy. And he started telling me about, I just wanted to come welcome you, and it looks like you're working on your place. And he used to fix appliances and washing machines and stuff for people. And
for the stars, for the Hollywood stars, he had a list of them.
You mean
that they were clients of his, that he would fix their machines?
Oh, no kidding! I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really? You don't mean the baseball team? You mean stars like movie stars?
Movie stars.
Oh,
big names. I can't remember them.
Yeah, learn something every day. If you're dumb enough. Anyway, so here's Paul, and at some point he told me the story. I don't think it was that day, but later on we became friends. His wife's name was Tekla, and they are Doug Hansen's grandparents, and Doug Hansen lives down the street, and when we do our walking the street part, we'll show that house. And so he told a lot of good stories, and one of them was the story of the fire that came through here on New Year's Eve of 58-59. That fire, like they always do, started in the northeast. Santa Ana wind blasted through here all the way to the ocean. The wind changed, and it came back here, and the part of Fernwood that didn't burn on the first time through did burn on the second time through, and it left a chimney standing at the top of the street. And
my place.
It burned your place?
No, on my place.
Yeah, on your place. Yeah. I don't know if we can we still see that?
Yeah.
From the street or something, like when we go up there later?
I don't know, but from the street. But
yeah, well, anyway.
It's there.
So there was a house up there that burned. There was a house at the top of Horseshoe that was a concrete first floor, and then apparently a wood second floor. Top half of that burned off. They put a roof on that and kept the house, and Fred's going to get into that, some more about that house later. Also, Mac's house, same thing, down in the ravine. We talked about Mac earlier. Burned the top off, and they just put a roof over the top of it and kept on going. So Paul tells me that's kind of the overall about this fire. Well, Paul there was a bunch of little water systems up here at that time, and Paul was in charge of one of them or some of them or all of them or something, and they were all run by electrical pumps. And they all were running off of wells. There's still a wellhead over in on Cary Lane that you can still see today. It's not functional, but it's still there. And there were pipes all over, and I found pipes in this property, the old 2-inch pipes with these big flanges. There's some right up on the other side of the house. And Paul was in charge of a lot of these water systems. And he said, well, when a fire comes through, the power goes out, pumps quit, no water. So here's this fire, not a lot of wind, but it was all around, and he said that he came down, he was having a New Year's Eve party. It was New Year's Eve, 58-59, and he had a bunch of people there, and they all had carbonated beverages. They had 7-Up and ginger ale and, of course, champagne. And they came down here, and they saved this house. They saved my house. And you might be wondering what this has been doing. So when I worked on this house, I pulled a burned piece of wood out of this northeast corner here, just like he said. He said that corner of the house was on fire, and we put it out with all these beverages. So I think that's a pretty neat piece of horseshoe
That is
lore.
a great story.
So here's the piece of wood right here, and I saved it all these years. The other thing I wanted to point out was Rosie Daggett came to help me with some stuff, and she was looking at these trees down here. There's an oak tree down at the bottom of the property that is 5 trunks, and she said that's a fire resprout. And so I've always believed, and I think it's probably true, that that fire burned that tree, and the reason it has 5 trunks and the one further up has, I think, 3 or 4, that is because that fire burned those trees in 58, 59. And I've found some burned stuff, not so much anymore, but when I first moved in here, I found some burned stuff. So, yeah.
Well, you have lots of experiences with fire here because you stuck it out here in that fire in
Oh, yeah.
97 or whatever
93,
that was.
yeah.
93.
Oh yeah, we had a strike team in our driveway, but
Yeah.
that could be a different story.
Modern story.
But you might want to talk about Craig and Anna's house now.
I would. Many iterations of that through the years. First of which was a young lady and her son, teenage son. Didn't really get to know her at all.
Wait, before you get started, let's say what house we're at the top of Horseshoe, and we'll go up there later. One of the 2 houses that was the concrete lower with the top burned off,
Right.
that they put a roof on. It's long gone now. A whole different house is there, but we'll show the location later. Anyway, that's the house we're talking about. So
That's the house. And so the way we met was on the corner of one of the parts of Horseshoe here. Smacked cars.
oh,
And it's
met
clear-
like literally
Yeah,
met.
clearly her fault, and she was all apologetic. We agreed on some nominal, didn't want to make a fuss about it, $150 or whatever. And she paid me off in $5 at here and there, or maybe $2, and she put it in an envelope. And
Well, there's Topanga for
so
you.
that was the first people that I knew there. But then the next 2 guys that moved in, they were kind of from the new age, California, what you might think of. And as often as not, when I would visit there, they would be naked, running around doing their thing. And one was an astrologer, and tall, skinny guy, black hair, and very regal looking almost. Had a snake, pretty big one, wrapped around his neck, is practicing his astrology, I guess, one day. But when he would go to work that night to pay for living there, I guess, and his other things, you would see him dress up in a uniform as a security guard with the policeman's hat kind of thing like that. And it's a completely different life and so on. Very interesting people at that point. And then Craig and Anna, I think, moved in, and they lived in it for quite a while, fixed it up into a kind of a decent place, even though that's all it was still. And then, of course, moved in, and the rest is history. Really,
Well,
it's a nice house now.
I heard a rumor that Charlie Manson lived in that house for a time,
Oh yeah,
and at some point, and I don't know if this happened while you were here, but Lowell George of Little Feet lived in that house.
I didn't know that. I hadn't heard that.
I don't know if that was one of the naked guys or one of the guy with the snake.
No.
Before that, maybe. Anyway, so not too long after I moved in here, maybe a couple of years, I was at a place down the hill here, and we were having a campfire down there, and Fred Tackett was there, and I happened to talk to Fred, and I said, Fred, I gotta know, I've heard that Charlie Manson lived with Lowell George at the end of Horseshoe Drive. Is this true? And Fred Tackett told me, yes, it's true. So, good enough for me. I'm going to say that Charlie Manson lived up at the end of Horseshoe here for a period of time. And I also think that was before he started all of his mayhem. But
Well, I heard that he also lived there from a couple other different sources.
well, there you go. So we got
And a first-person story who actually met him up here at the end of Horseshoe Drive, in fact.
Oh, really?
helping him out. That's a long story, but
It's all right. We got hours and hours of
but it was
video
convinced surely that I've heard it now from 3 or 4 different places, and now from you as well. So I accept it as well.
Yeah, I do. Well, when did little George live there relative to when did you move in? That's a
Well,
missing piece.
not when I was there.
Okay, so before then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the timing of it, but anyway. All right.
Other interesting people that lived on the street would be Roseanne's husband,
Pentland.
Bill Pentland.
Bill Pentland. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was an interesting
That
character.
was way back.
Yeah.
Not very long either. He didn't live there very long.
Yeah, Roseanne Barr, right?
Roseanne Barr.
Yeah.
She's on the tube today.
Yeah.
On a magazine cover. I just saw it the other day. This woman has got it together.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, we had Jack and Lexi Daly lived next door. Jack actually bought both those properties. Dick Sherman, I'm told, used to own that property and knew all about this property. And you know Dick?
Not really.
Not really. He has had Topanga Underground. He's actually leaving the canyon.
I know of him.
There's
of
going to
course.
be a going away party for him coming up.
I think
here.
I had an occasion with him, but
Anyway, he knows everything there is to know about every septic system in the canyon. But so I think Jack bought this property here from Richard Sherman, and then split it into and built the 2 houses. He built this one first, and lived in it while he built the one next door, and then he ended up living there and renting this one. And not too long after we moved in, the guys who lived here at this nearest house went after Jack with a pitchfork or a shovel or something.
Right.
They had some kind of falling out, and I never knew what it was about, but they asked if they were moving out, and they asked if they could use our property here to get up to the street, and so they didn't have to go by Jack. But Jack was just the nicest, most mild-mannered guy you'd ever want to meet, and generous and warm, and I can't imagine anybody being so mad as to go after Jack with a shovel or pitchfork or whatever it was. So
don't know that one.
anyway, yeah, so that's so kind of going through some people that we knew. So across the street when we first moved in was Hope and JT, or Jim Thompson. Jim Thompson was a plumber and a stunt driver, and also a damn good horse rider. And one time Jim's grandfather used to run horses all up through Wyoming and Colorado and Idaho and up in that area, and somehow came by this old wood stove, this parlor stove, that had been in one of those line shacks that these guys, they'll drive the cattle for a certain distance, and somebody will have built a shack, and they'd stay in the shack and then keep on going on their cattle drive. And so JT ended up with a wood stove out of one of these line shacks. And I was up there the night he was putting it in, and I thought this was just the coolest thing ever. And so time went on like you always hope it will, and there came a time when JT was getting rid of some stuff, and so he said, "Hey, I got some stuff when I come up, and maybe you want some of these shoes and dishes and whatever." And so I said, "Sure." And sure enough, that wood stove's sitting out in the yard. And I said, Jim, I said, if you ever want to sell that wood stove, I sure would be interested. I just really love that. And he said, stove's not for sale. So we went on and looked at the other stuff, and we chatted for a while. And I came back down the hill, and he said, "Well, shall I help you take that wood stove down to your house?" And I said, "Well, wait a minute, I'm confused. I thought it wasn't for sale." He said, "It's not." He said, "I'll give it to you on one condition." And I said, "Well, okay, what's that?" And he said, "Keep it in the family. You got to keep it in the family." And I said, "Well, what's that mean, Jim?" And he said, "Well, just don't sell it with a house, and give it to somebody you love or somebody you know who will love it, and because it means a lot to me as my grandfather's and stuff." So I said, "All right, you got a deal." And that stove is in my living room today, and I did restore it back in around 2002 or 3. Did some work on it, took it all apart actually, and got some pieces plated and got some new pieces for it, and it warms my house in the winter. So anyway, that's the story of Jim and the wood stove.
And a great way to stay warm here in Topanga.
No kidding.
Fire. In the days when fire wasn't such an issue, I had my little barbecue place there.
Yep, you did.
Outside, and we'd build a little fire and a little campfire. And
I hung out with you on more than one occasion up
my
there.
buddies from
Yep.
Albuquerque and Tucson come through. We have our little weenie roast. And, there was a lot of living in the mountains here for me, especially from the old days.
Oh, yeah.
It was just that free, dogs running. It was just a great time of that sort of thing. And I don't know if anybody dares to do that anymore. But
Yeah, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
It's changed a lot. And 33 years ago, it was quite a more open, freer situation, I think, than it is now. I think.
well, more people and just a faster life.
Yeah.
The whole change is everywhere, not just here.
And the traffic. I had John Stevens, who I imagine people viewing this, many will know who John Stevens is. He's a longtime Topangan, really active in TSEP, and did all kinds of stuff for all kinds of people. Much loved person, living now in Morongo Valley, I think, or Joshua Tree. But John told me one time that back in the day, you could take a nap. You could lie down and go to sleep in the middle of Fernwood in the middle of the night and not worry about a thing because there wasn't any traffic. I mean, I wouldn't dare.
Skate marauders would be.
The skateboarders might come down and wake you up. But other than that, he said it's just, that's a visual I've kept with me.
Huh.
Talking about characters. There was a guy up here when I first moved in called Omer of Topanga. And Omer was just a guy who would help you with anything you needed help with. He had a truck and he could move stuff and he'd do yard work and he did a little carpentry and a little bit of handyman and this and that. Omer of Topanga. I don't have too much to say. I just kind of always liked Omer of Topanga.
I don't know him. I don't know of him. Maybe I do. I'd know him when I'd see him, but I never heard that name.
It seems to me that he made it clear what his name was on a number of, because I didn't.
He had a big panel truck full of tools and things. No, that was a
I
different
don't remember
guy.
what kind of vehicle. I thought he had like a pickup truck. He had dark hair. He had a card that said Omer, O-M-E-R, Omer of Topanga. Then there was the tree trimmer guy, the Vietnam vet. Did you ever meet him? He was solid scars from his hand all the way up his arms. And he said, I'm famous for self-surgery. And he would carry a suture kit around. Every now and then he'd nick himself with an axe or a chainsaw or something. And he'd sew himself up. And he really did. He had just what looked to me anyway like scars all the way up. And this guy was a tree trimmer. No, it's not Danny. Not Barefoot Danny. And he was a tree topper up in Oregon or somewhere up Pacific Northwest. And he told me what it was like to top like a 200-foot tall tree. So you climb up the tree with your chainsaw hanging on a rope.
It takes balls.
And you strap yourself to the tree and then you start cutting. Fire up the chainsaw and start cutting. We're talking a tree that's probably, I don't know, I'm guessing, but 2.5, 3 feet in diameter. So you start cutting this tree. Top of the tree starts to go over. And when that top of the tree starts to go over, the center of gravity of the tree shifts from the middle, starts going to the outside. And he's here. And so this whole tree starts to lean. And they said when the tree starts to lean, that's when you start cutting like a bat out of hell. And you just go and go and go, and it's leaning more and more. The tree leans over, and when that top finally lets go, you just throw the chainsaw, hang on, and go for a ride, and that tree comes back and forth, maybe 40, 50 feet each side of center until it comes back to the beginning.
Wow.
I'll never forget that guy telling that story. It's
Gee.
like, curl your damn hair.
Well, we're getting into Topanga characters now. It's outside of Horseshoe.
Well,
But,
it is. But
we've gone through some of our characters, I guess, but it's probably worth mentioning all of these guys because there are many.
Well, you're right about that for sure. I want to, but he did some tree trimming for me, so it ties in. But yeah.
What a rich place.
No kidding. All right, let's pause here. Well, you can cut the. Don't stop everything. I'm just gonna look here for a second.
That's good.
What about this walk? What are we envisioning here for that?
Well, I don't know. Let's not think about that quite yet. Oh,
All right. We got stories to tell you.
wait for the chopper to go.
Perhaps as well.
And there was the twice your trash back guy. All right, I got one more. I don't know. I'm getting kind of wiggy now. Are we still rolling?
Yeah,
All right.
let's go.
Yeah. So another character was a guy who had an old Army deuce-and-a-half truck with a dump bed on it. And this guy would park his truck on your property, and you load it, and he'll drive it to the dump. And I forget what his name was, too, but I used him a number of times. Forget his name, but he was always saying, to the dump, to the dump, to the dump, dump, dump. They'd look at you and go, to the dump, to the dump, to the dump, dump, dump. And he said, I never worry about getting paid because if somebody doesn't pay me, twice your trash back. God, these guys, it just was great back in the day. It's still good, but you know, I don't know too many guys like this anymore up here. They've kind of moved on a little bit, but so then there was the day, Thanksgiving, about maybe 3 years ago. I was working up in my shop. It was in the morning, about 10, and I hear somebody walking down my stairs, and I think that I knew Frederick was coming that day or something, so I didn't think too much about it, but then I hear voices, and it turns out he's with somebody, and so I go check this out, and this guy that he's with, his name is Mike Linsday, and Mike Linsday owned this house in 1950, somewhere in the late 50s. So I don't know, I guess he must have gone through that fire, but I don't remember talking about that. Maybe it was after that. And he built on part of the house the other side, and so we just had a great old chat, and it turns out he just showed up. And he said that he has showed up here a few times, but was too shy to come and introduce himself. But it was just a kick, really a thrill to meet him, and I've got some audio talking to him. So what else?
How about Ole? He'd
Ole.
be a good source.
Yeah, I don't know.
And Doug, too, you know, in another way.
Doug
Hansen.
Hansen. Well, yeah, I mean, Doug Hansen, of course, we mentioned Paul and Tekla, Doug Hansen's grandparents. Doug Hansen grew up here as a kid visiting, and then he moved in, I think your list said 88, so a couple years after I moved in, and he's a contractor here and been a really good friend. You know, we met early on and watched his kids grow up and stuff. Don't have too many crazy stories about him, though. Probably are some, I just don't know about him.
His grandfather, however, Paul Duber, which you talked about,
yeah,
I met him as well, just because he would often sit at the garage that Doug remade.
Rickety old red garage.
In his chair and with his big fat cigar, watching the world go by.
Yeah. And
as we, drive up to the end of Horseshoe, I would always drop by, and so I met him through that way, and he was always congenial, and we had lots of nice talks, and often promised somehow I was going to get a piece of what's her name? Ekla's pie.
Tekla?
Tekla's pie.
Yeah.
Never happened, but that was a promise that was often made, and I often wish that it had come to pass. Interesting old guy, and so, of course Doug, being a direct descendant, is just enriched also the neighborhood.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know.
immeasurably.
He has it over me,
Yeah.
certainly, even as numbers will have, certainly.
Yeah.
And anyways, it goes on. You know. I'm sorry to leave it, by the way. I'm leaving it.
Yeah.
I left it.
You really, yeah.
I got beat out.
Yeah, you left it, but you're still around, but you're going to really leave it here in a little bit.
Yeah.
And take.
Going back.
We became pretty good friends with Paul, Duber, and Tekla, and one Christmas they gave us this pitcher. Now they were German, and so they gave us this pitcher here, and this was our syrup pitcher for years and years and years, and has some cool writing on the other side that I can't read. I think it's in German, and that's always been a prized possession of mine, just because
Goodness.
it goes back to the very earliest days here.
Doug might be able to tell you what that is.
He might. I don't know if I've ever showed it to him.
Yeah, you should.
Jens down here speaks fluent German.
Ah,
He could help too.
wow.
So we've got a lot of German people. Does Doug speak German? He knows.
Not that I know of. I never heard
Because
him.
I
I never heard him swear in German.
only in English, right? So here we have two Paul and Tekla related architects right here on the table.
Really?
So yeah. Anyway, there's that. Man, I got almost all of it done. One of the, I heard what sounded like a motorcycle or something. A ubiquitous sound here back in the day, and I'm sure you remember this, was that every weekend you could hear motorcycles on all the fire roads. And you don't hear that anymore because that became illegal. Not all that long after I moved in, but it was one of the sounds that I always associated living in the mountains. You hear this,
Hey, that's pretty good. You mean all out there?
all out there.
What I remember,
Probably over there. I don't know where they were, but
what I would remember on Fernwood Pacific is they would come in packs. These are not gangs, but they were clubs of some sort on a Sunday.
Groups.
Sunday, and you would see them stream by, maybe 100 of them,
Wow.
with chicks on the back, and
Yeah.
I mean the whole show. Some nice bikes, and you know you'd hear them really blasting as they go by my place, but then as they go up further, you hear them for quite a while.
Going to the rock store.
Yeah, to the rock store.
Going to the rock
Yeah.
store. No doubt.
Wow. Never been to I've been by it 100 times, but
Oh,
I've
yeah.
never stopped. Have you?
I used to work right across the street where
You did?
Marcia lives.
Yeah, Marcia lives there.
Yeah, I spent a summer running sprinkler pipe all over those hills at
No kidding. I didn't know that.
what's the name of it? Seminole Hot Springs. Before there was everything was just barren, just hillsides. Yeah, a buddy of mine's father owned it in a partnership, and they hired us to run sprinkler pipe all over those hills over there.
No kidding. Wow.
One summer. It was hot and dusty and just. Then I had to tar the road one day, about 110 degrees, and I got sick. I had to go home. Anyway, I'm getting off the track here. Down here, right below me, a guy named Rogers Weld, and yeah, that's Rogers with an S on the end of it, Weld, lived, and he had a massive cactus and succulent nursery down here. And I so wish I had pictures of that.
I have a few.
Do you? Okay, well, that would be cool. I'd like to see those. And he was one of the preeminent authorities in the world, I guess, on these kind of plants. You know, okay, and he had stuff from Madagascar, and he had stuff from Mexico, and he had stuff from South America, and some of them he'd go get himself. And I know he went down to Mexico a lot, and I don't know the half of it, but unfortunately he died not long ago. But
He used to also supply the movie industry, I think, with plants as props.
wouldn't be surprised.
He told me
He
that
had
story.
hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah.
This Cycas revoluta up here in the rocks, that came from him. That was
Huh.
just a little tiny one. Not this one. I had that one earlier, but the one up there, that came from Rogers. And heck of a guy. He was old school. He'd been here since '63, 1963, and he was classic old school Topanga. Somebody told me one time about Rogers. He said he just wants to be left alone. I guess I asked, well, what kind of neighbor is he, or something like that. And I forget who told me that, but I just remember that, being told that. And
You might have come to one of the Labor Day parties. I don't remember for sure.
oh, absolutely. He came all
I didn't
just
never get to know him.
dressed to the nines a few times. He came by himself before Darlene. He outlived 2 wives.
Oh, okay.
At least. Yeah, I think he was with Mary when I first knew him, and then somebody else, and then Darlene. And yeah, he was up before Darlene. He was up at the top of the street there, talking about hoping to get some luck with the ladies. I think that was after his second wife died. And he had sort of a short top hat
Wow.
and a shark tooth necklace, and he was quite the styling dude.
Didn't know that part of him.
Yeah, he was, definitely at one of the parties.
Hmm.
I don't know, he might be in that picture. We'll look later. But
Yeah.
it was not unusual when Ken and Colleen lived here that the horses would get out, and there'd be horses trotting up and down the street, horses down here in my yard. And we had a couple of horse lead ropes just in the house here, and we'd hear the horses cruising around. We'd go catch them and put them, because we knew them. We used to ride them a lot, and so the horses knew us, and we could just walk up to them. And, well, if they were free, they kind of wanted to stay free, so it might take a little bit of effort to catch them, but we'd go get them and put them back in the corral there. That was fun.
Mhm.
Just iconic sounds. Again, I can hear it. I can
Boy.
hear the horses clip-clopping up the street. It's like
I
just
remember
like
that,
yesterday.
but I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember the experiences of having those horses here. But yeah, and that's right. There's a little pen there.
Well, where Doug's garage is now, that used to be just a dirt hillside,
Yeah.
and Paul Duber had some blue iron fence or steel fence posts with some sort of broken down barbed wire.
Hmm.
Wasn't much of a fence anymore, but the posts were there. And one time Ken rigged up the fence and turned his horses out on that hill,
Oh, really?
and they were up there for, I don't know, a month or something. Oh, we got something?
Well, maybe. Just thinking about Horseshoe Drive in general, and my place in specific, I guess, that it was for my friends from out of town, it was a destination of kind of, a resort. They enjoyed my crude little place, but comfortable enough and clean enough. So they would stay for a week or so and kind of take over the house, and they were having a vacation and having the attractions of the city as well.
Yeah.
So I was very popular in that regard. I enjoyed those visits, in fact. So I think everyone has had those kinds of experiences of people out of town. They come here and their eyes are sort of wide open.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a magical place. There's something really, really magical about Topanga in general, of course, but I think this particular part, probably everybody would say that about where they live, but it really does seem over the top,
Mm.
I noticed that right off. Well, we could talk about the fire in '93. I don't think we've hit on that too much.
Gosh, I haven't even thought about that for years. I escaped it, I guess. I finally left.
Well, I wrote a song about it.
Oh,
But yeah, so come the day, November 2nd of 1993, it was a Tuesday in the morning. I was working on a deck up on Arctique. Well, they're kind of at the other end of the canyon. And my wife came up, we were actually refinancing the house, and she came up with some papers to sign. And as she was leaving, she looked over to the west, and there's this column of smoke. And I had just been to the lumber store to get some stuff, and I was coming back from the lumber store, and the wind was just whipping down there. It was blowing the trees, and I was thinking, God, I hope the fire doesn't start today. And sure enough, not an hour later, I see this column of smoke, and so I looked over there and saw where the wind was and realized where I was, and I said, well, I got about a half hour left here. I'll just finish this up. I'm not going to probably get to our house at all. And there were women, looked like nannies, with babies running up and down the street screaming. Literal truth.
wow,
They were running up and down the street holding these babies and screaming.
wow.
So that was quite a scene. So anyway, I get in my truck, pack everything up, and I come down. I get to Old Canyon, the post office, and that whole area down there. And somebody had gotten a big horse trailer crossed up down there, and the traffic was already starting to lock up. And I just barely made it back up here. And when I came up here, it was about as much wind as there is right this minute, which is almost none. And I thought, well, no wind here, so Rogers down the hill here had always told me, if the wind's blowing, you go. If the wind's not blowing, you stay. And we had heard stories about, well, when a fire comes, there's no water, there's no light, no electricity, and you got to stick around and put out the spot fires with trash cans full of water and wet blankets. And so we got trash cans and put them all around the house and got blankets and cloths in them and got ready to fight the fire on our own, because we figured everybody in the neighborhood had gone. We figured we'd be here on our own, and it wasn't blowing too hard, so it was going to be about spot fires. And so we're up here. It was dark. It had been dark for a while. It must have been around 9 at night. We hear, before that happened, the cops came and tried to get us out, and we told the cops, oh, no, we're going. We acted all crazy and everything. And that was good enough for the cop, and he went on down the road. He said, gotta get out of here. Oh, yeah, okay. And so I acted crazy enough and stuff, convinced the cops that we were going, and the cop went away, and so we went about our business trying to get stuff organized to fight the fire. And I hear the rumble of big engines. What in the heck? And so we go up here and we look, and up the street comes several fire engines. Well, they had sent a strike team up here on our street. And so we said, hey guys, park here in the driveway. We got bathrooms, we got coffee, we got bacon and eggs in the morning. Guy said, good idea. So we ended up with a fire truck right here in our driveway, and another one up at the top of the street, another one down just past Hanson's place, another one down at the bottom. I think that's 4, and then one last one up on the dirt road, which is up above the up JT, Maryland, Dale Schwartz property. And so there we were, and the guys, they kind of sized us up a little bit.
Wait 1 second. Hold this.
Yeah.
Take it up a little. So.
Yep, got a biz jet going into Burbank, right base, or right downwind for Burbank.
A screamer.
Live show, guys. Yeah, it's a live show, so we got to deal with ambient whatever goes on. So anyway, there was a period of time these guys had to figure out if we were nuts or we were okay. And so we convinced them that we were okay. And they said, well, if you freak out and you got to go, we got to get out of here and let you out. So we really kind of want to make sure where you guys are at. And we said, we're in for the duration. We're here. We've decided we're going to stay. We're going to save the place, whatever. I said, okay, but if we decide we got to go, you're going with us. We said, deal. So they gave us turnouts, taught us how to use the equipment, and hooked up to the fire hydrant that happens to be right here on my property. Opened up those things and all right, this is great, man. We're ready. We're so ready, because we thought we were going to be doing this with trash cans and wet blankets, and now we got technology, we got manpower, we got the whole thing. And so we put these guys up, and we would raid all the neighbors. Oh, one of the things I told the guys was well, it might be nice to have me, because I know where every electrical panel and every propane tank is on the whole street, in every house. And they said, that's good. And these guys were heavy rescue guys. They did not know that much about wildland firefighting. I mean, whatever they got trained, maybe not. But their experience, they were from Orange County, and their experience was urban heavy rescue. People get trapped in cars. People get trapped in buildings. These are the guys. And during the Loma Prieta earthquake, in whenever that was, it had been several years previous, the guy in our driveway, I wish I could remember his name now, he and another guy were the guys that pulled those people out of that car, that guy out of that car that had lived for like two days trapped in the car. These were the guys that pulled that guy out. It was all over the news. It was international news that this guy had survived 2 days trapped in this car after the earthquake. And it was this guy in our driveway that pulled him out. Wow. Unfortunately, the guy died about a week later. Just couldn't overcome his injuries or whatever. But and I saw that guy interview. There was just not all that long ago, I saw the guy that was in our driveway interviewed on TV. It was like a 10-year anniversary or 20 or 15 or something. And yeah, and they went through the whole thing. And so,
how many days were they here?
They were here. They got here Monday night. They were here Tuesday, all day Wednesday. And by then things were calming down. But boy, what an air show we had. Because the fire, I could tell lots of stories about the fire. I don't know how far we want to go. The fire, the wind changed just like it did 58, 59. And it started, the fire came over the top of the mountain up here about 1 in the morning. And it was just backing down ever so slow, coming down this hill over here. Those guys went to sleep. I mean, we all knew we weren't in any immediate danger. But, and they had some aircraft around, and I suggested to a guy in a car that was bristling with radio antennas, he was obviously some kind of communication guy. I said, if you get all the air power you got, put out all the fires in this little canyon here. When the wind changes and blows that fire, you won't have to worry about Fernwood. And the guy thought, gee, that's a great idea. And he got on the radio, couldn't convince anybody to do it. So sure enough, the wind changed later on Wednesday. Did I say Monday? The fire started on Tuesday. Guys were here from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I think that was it. I think it's like 3 days. So this is Wednesday morning. Didn't put the fire out, let it burn, and the wind did come up, and it blew the fire down, and we had a lot of smoke and quite a lot of wind up here. I mean, at that time, fire was down over there, fire had gone around there. The guys that held it up at the dirt road up above here, but they had a heck of a time. By then they had some hand crews in there, and they were able to save all of Fernwood. No houses on Fernwood burned in that fire. But it went around, it jumped across, and back then you could look right through here and see, but it jumped across the canyon down kind of below the lumber store ways and started burning up the other side. And all the air power went over there. Because why? Well, it's burning now for the rich people in the Palisades. So us hippies in Topanga didn't rate anymore. They put everything on that. And not only that, was a guy with a D9 that drove it right down that ridge, and you can still see the remnants of that fire break that he cut right through this almond tree here. Maybe on the camera you can see that. This guy just drove this D9 straight down there. Those guys are Boy, those guys are crazy. They got some serious
Balls.
huevos. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, we had a heck of an air show, watching all kinds of aircraft drop, all kinds of FOS check and everything as they were trying to keep this fire contained, and it was quite an experience.
I remember when it was kind of under control, they were doing the hot spots, and they had the big Hueys
Yep,
with the buckets.
Yep.
They would go down the canyon, get the ocean full
yep.
of the bucket, and come up right out here. In fact, I took some
Yeah.
photos of it.
Yep.
I have some really close-up photos
Yep.
of them releasing the water. And I think I never really noticed or saw it, but people claim they saw a fish flying out of the
Yeah.
bottom of that.
I know.
I'll have to look at my photos a little closer, I think.
I heard stories of a diver got sucked up. Man.
Oh,
I think
no,
that-
I haven't heard that
I
one.
think that's getting a little out of hand. But yeah, I would believe fish, I guess.
Uh-uh.
I got hit by a drop. Yeah, we were down there right with Hanson just watching them do that.
Mhm.
And, you know, you see on TV, they dump the bucket, and it looks like a water spray. Well, if you get up close, those drops of water about the size of your fist, and I got hit on the top of the head with one of those. Man, about knocked me out. It's a
Wow.
big old pew.
Wow, that's a story.
And then I don't know if it was Thursday or it was getting things were under control here. We had some friends over on Stites that had stayed, and they had saved a house over there. A guy named Terry cut down a bunch of trees, and they were really going crazy over there saving Terry's house. And we were over there, and I guess they were putting up some firemen too. And this arson investigator guy, and he had on his turnout coat the name Orr, O-R-R. And I remember that because I had a childhood friend with that same name, and a kind of unusual name. I haven't run into too many people with that name. So he was there, and he was talking about all how guys start fires, and he was really getting into it. Well, it turned out this guy Orr later got convicted for starting a bunch of fires in Altadena. I think it was like a year earlier, or maybe that same year. So this guy that we talked to was an arsonist. Never forget that. Convicted. This is not rumor. He is probably, maybe still in jail. I don't know. But, yep, you never know what you're going to run into. Yeah, I think Anna was responsible for a lot of those dogs, because I heard the story that she would just find a dog wandering around on the beach or something, bring him home, and cut him loose on the street. I think that was maybe part of why there was 13 dogs. I don't know.
I don't know, I thought I kind of remember those dogs as individuals.
Well, yeah, some of them were, no doubt. I guess, I don't know. That could be wrong. Anyway, I'm just about out of stuff, I guess.
So